All right, hi, I'm Dr. Jensen. I'm in St. George, Utah, and I do a procedure called prolotherapy. Prolotherapy is short for proliferation. Proliferation is growth of new tissue. What we do with this procedure is try to enhance the growth of the ligamentous or tendinous tissues in the body, those that have been injured. So I'm going to take you through three different stories here about prolotherapy, how the inflammatory reaction works, how the prolotherapy works with that to heal the parts of the body that are injured. So to start with, let's talk about inflammation. There's three stages of inflammation. The first stage, the inflammatory stage, of course, is characterized by pain, swelling, decreased mobility, heat or warmth, and discoloration or bruising. Those five things are the basic parts of an inflammatory process. Within that inflammatory process, there's enzymes, hormones, and other biochemical substances that create that inflammatory process, the swelling, the heat, and the bruising. That first stage is going to last anywhere from 1 to 7 days. No matter really what you take can take anti-inflammatories and turn it off or slow it down, but there's still going to be some inflammation that occurs during that time. The second stage, which I like to call, there's a professional name for it, but I like to call it the cleanup stage. During this stage, the enzymes, hormones, and chemicals of the first stage cause a cleanup of the second stage. That's when the bruising turns from black and purple to yellow, green, and brown. That's when the swelling starts to go down. That's when the pain starts to subside. That's when the mobility improves. You're able to use that particular joint again. So that's the second stage. Then the second stage, chemicals, enzymes, and hormones, cause the third stage of healing, which is the collagen laydown stage. Now I like to think of that best when you have a bad cut. The first part of the cut, you have a little swelling around the edges. They're kind of torn and jagged and it bleeds. Then about the third, fourth, fifth day, it starts to look, there's a clear fluid that appears on the cut, and it's already stopped bleeding, and it looks kind of fresh but somewhat dry as well. About the fifth, sixth day, the swelling around the edges goes down, the redness goes down. Of course, you're not bleeding anymore. And then for the next 6 weeks, the collagen starts to lay down underneath the scab, which you don't see happening, but underneath that scab there's collagen being built, and that collagen is pulling those tissues together. So in the third stage of healing, the enzymes and chemicals and hormones of the second stage cause collagen to be made in that third stage. That collagen then pulls the tissues tight together and reforms that tissue. Now the best place we see that is in the scar itself. Now in medical school, I had a really great plastic surgeon who taught us when we bring those edges together to just let those edges kiss. And as those edges come, as the collagen lays down in there, then the collagen will actually pull that tissue together. In science, we call that action a triple helix. I call it a braid. A triple helix is basically a simple braid. And as that collagen braids itself with the existing tissue, it actually pulls that tissue tight. Now, if a surgeon pulls the tissue tight with their sutures, and they pull that tight to begin with, then the collagen pulls it even tighter, and that's when you get a pucker of the scar. So we don't want to cause that pucker, we just want to bring that tissue together. So that's kind of the basic premise of the the three stages of the inflammation. So with prolotherapy, what we're trying to do is reintroduce that same concept, where we're introducing substances that will create that biochemical process of the inflammatory response. So let's take a knee, for example. A knee should only move in flexion and extension. It shouldn't do any lateral flexion. It shouldn't do any hyperextension. It really should only do flexion and extension. Now let's pretend that this gentleman is a football player and he gets clipped from the side, takes out his medial ligament, which is attaching over here. Now, instead of that knee being tight here, we get a little offset. Now this is millimeters, seriously millimeters, and that's not a lot of space, but Now that knee has a slight wobble to it every time the person walks. As that wobble continues over years, you start to wear out the collagen or the meniscus inside there. You also, as that meniscus wears from 1/4 down to 1/8 inch, the ligaments on the lateral side, on the back side, on the front side, and internal, the cruciate ligaments, they end up being looser. So now we got a knee that's kind of flopping all over, like a couple of skeleton bones. With prolotherapy, what we want to do is tighten those ligaments up, cause a healing, cause more collagen to be laid down on those ligaments, thus tightening them down so that that normal motion returns to the person's knee. Here's a hip, for example. We can take this hip. This is a plastic hip, not real. But you can see here, and I don't know if you can zone in there, the collagen wrapping around that particular joint. Now here's the leg as it would come down, and there's the hip ball and socket in underneath the ligaments here. Now that moves in a certain amount of range of motion so that person can walk. Those are the ligaments that attach that, and if you could look closely at the lines or sinews of those ligamentous tissues, they actually wrap around to allow the swinging motion of that leg joint. Well, when those ligaments become detached on the edges or stripped or frayed, strained, sprained, we can go in and tackle them with the prolotherapy solution, and it will re-establish connections and tighten that joint back up to where it's more stable.